All right, so it's 1:01. We're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Tori Matajowski. I am with Great Northern Development Corporation in Wolf Point, and I am your room host for this breakout session. So we're excited to have you join us today. Hope you had a good lunch break. We do ask that you mute your mics and use the chat function for any questions you might have. We'll try to address all the questions before the end of the session, but I do know this is being recorded too. So, and just a few quick housekeeping items. We are recording this session. Reminder to mute your lines and please turn your video off while the presenters are speaking. And click the chat icon, select all panelists and attendees, enter your name, organization, and your location. So we have an idea who all is joining us. And then, of course, if there's Q&A at the end, you can go ahead and turn your video back on then. But please, while the speakers are talking, just turn your video off. Each of you should have received a whiteboard panel and a marker in the mail. If you find something inspiring, exciting, or new, write a quick adjective on the whiteboard, hold it up, and let us know during the Q&A time at the end of the session. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tracy McIntyre and Davey Madison with the Montana Cooperative Development Center. See you later.
Thanks, Tori. Yes, so we're super excited to be here today. My name is Tracy McIntyre. I'm the director of the Montana Cooperative Development Center, and I'll let Davey introduce herself.
Hey everybody, I'm Davey Madison and I'm the program director of the Montana Cooperative Development Center.
So today we do have slides for you guys, and there's a lot of words on these slides. We did that intentionally, not that we expect you to read everything, but for resources and when the slides are shared later that you would have that information. So we apologize in advance that there's a lot of wording, but we think that it enhances later on. So let's see. My slides.
Just a reminder to please mute. Thank you.
And technical difficulties, my slides don't want to move forward. Hold on one sec. Weird. Never had that happen before. Okay, from beginning. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. So today what we wanted to do, we're going to do a quick review of who Montana Cooperative Development Center is. We call ourselves MCDC for the short. We're going to review what a cooperative is for those of you that are not familiar with cooperatives or how they work in the state of Montana. A quick overview of kind of what we see as a housing crisis or what communities are talking to us about needs. Reviewing housing cooperatives, and then we're going to kind of go into what the Opportunity Development Cooperatives are. Davey is going to review that. Those are also called investing co-ops. And then at the end, we do have kind of a Q&A, but also open discussion, as well as opportunity to kind of start looking at how you would start forming a cooperative in your community. We encourage questions throughout. So if you have questions, Tori is watching that for us. Please put them in the chat box and we'll make sure that we can get there. So who we are. So our main mission as Montana Cooperative Development Center, MCDC, is really we promote and develop cooperatives. And so we are using the cooperative business model all across the state of Montana to address economic and community needs. We are state sponsored as well as receive funds from the federal government. And then we also, we operate the Council of Cooperatives. So we have a great and close network with existing co-ops all across the state. The way that we operate, there's only 4 of us at the state level, but we have contracts with great people like Tori and her team up at Great Northern. And so you'll see by this slide that there's not any part of the state of Montana that Montana Co-op Development Center is not somehow touching. And we also serve all of the 7 Native American reservations. We really focus on building the ecosystem for cooperatives. So we work closely with the Council of Cooperatives, There's 3 different community or associations. The electricals co-ops have their own, the telecommunications have their own, and the credit unions have their own. And so we have a close working relationship with them, and then accounting and legal professionals and other agricultural associations and providers across the state. So question, and you can use your chat, but we want you guys to look at these great logos and tell us who are the cooperatives on there. And can anybody spot a non-co-op? You can just put that in the chat if you think there's one. Not seeing any. Go back. Missoula Electric, definitely. There you go. Danielle got it. All of them are. Every single one that you see here are a form of a cooperative. We have federal co-ops, we have local state ones, electrical, investing. We have our newest one is a Butte Food Co-op, which many have heard about. They've been really kind of kicking butt and taking names on the way that they've incorporated. So it's pretty exciting. And I think, Davey, I've totally stolen your slides.
Doing good. Keep going.
Well, it's not letting me again. Why are you not letting me advance? Maybe you're going to have to share your screen because mine keeps like freezing up or something. I'm not sure.
Davey, I made you a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen.
You gotta love technology, guys. All right, so across the state of Montana, there are a number of different types of cooperatives. We do have, you know, the traditional ones that people are most familiar with are the credit unions, the rural electric, and the telecommunications, and then the supply farm store ones. We have over 20, though, that are really kind of these non-traditional co-ops in the state of Montana. And those are really going to be the ones that we're going to be discussing today. And then for our, we just finished in January of 2021, a cooperative impact report with the BBER out of Missoula. And the numbers were pretty staggering. And we just wanted to point out, like right there in the middle of the screen, you can kind of see ultimately what all of our co-ops, those are across all sectors, what we're providing. So the question that we proposed to BBER was, what would happen if cooperatives did not exist in Montana? And the numbers were that, you know, because of the Montana cooperative economy, we have over 23,000 jobs, 7.6 billion each year in additional output. And so it's just kind of showing. And then one of the things I really like to show is that Montana cooperatives as a whole have 47% higher than the state average in salary base. Okay, now it's over to you, Davey.
All right, so can you still see my screen?
It went into presenters.
There we go. Sorry, I had to.
There you go.
All right, so we'll just real quickly just go over what a cooperative is. So they're an interesting business model. They're a really adaptable business model. But there's also, not everyone knows what they are. So we'll just go over this real quick. So basically a cooperative is, at the end of the day, just a group of people who come together who are joining forces and working together to create a business that's going to solve a problem. And that problem could be an economic need, it could be a service, it could be housing as well. Oh, now mine's frozen. Oh, there we go. At the very base of a cooperative, the biggest thing is the ownership structure of that. So the way that a cooperative is set up is you are owned by your members, which means that every person who becomes a member is also an owner. And in that ownership, it's all equal share. It doesn't matter when or how much money they put in, they are all on equal footing as owners of that business. As member owners, they do have a duty to patronize that business to keep it viable, to keep it going. And they're really the ones who are going to make all of the decisions for that business through their board of directors or through a membership vote. Cooperatives are really designed to just really address what they need. So they're set up as a business. In the case of a lot of most of the ones that we've been developing, they are for-profit business, and they should make money. But at the end of the day, their ultimate goal is not to make money. Their ultimate goal is to fill a need for their membership base. Cooperatives all follow cooperative principles. So cooperatives are not a new model. They've been around for hundreds of years at this point. But cooperatives all around the world basically follow these 7 cooperative principles. So they have open and voluntary membership. They're democratically controlled by their members. Their members are required to participate in the cooperative. They are autonomous and independent, meaning that they cannot ever be taken over or controlled by an outside entity. That's not their membership. They should always display concern for their community. They should always try to cooperate wherever possible with cooperatives or other organizations. And there's a huge emphasis of education in all cooperatives. There are, oh, look, she has my numbers here that I can't read. So there are millions of cooperatives all across the world. We have 168-ish in the state, I think, with the last
Yeah,
count.
about 150 to 160. It keeps changing because our credit unions have been combining, and some of our farm stores have kind of come together as well. So we're right around that 150 in Montana.
Yeah. And then, as you saw earlier, they just have a huge outsized impact in the state of Montana. And it's just absolutely amazing what they can do together. So in the state of Montana, so basically every state sort of has their own statutes that govern how their cooperatives are set up. In the state of Montana, we have 4 chapters. So we have a Chapter 15, which is a for-profit cooperative association. We have a Chapter 16, which is an agricultural association. A Chapter 17, which is an agricultural marketing association, which is a little different than the agricultural association because of the way they function and who their membership can be. And then we have a Chapter 18, which is our utilities, which is going to be our electricals and our telecommunications. Most other states, and this is an important one, most other states always organize their cooperatives as nonprofits. In Montana, we are very fortunate to have this for-profit model because it really gives us a lot more flexibility on how we can set things up and what we can do with cooperatives. So they really are a really, really flexible business option in Montana. I think I'm done. So I can't see the chat without getting rid of my screen. So if you just want to put into the chat box if you are a member of a cooperative. So remember that your credit unions are cooperatives. Your electrical utilities could be cooperatives. CHS is also a cooperative. So feel free to put any of those in there. And if Tracy can see them, she can tell me.
I am seeing them, yeah. So we've got like Clearwater Credit Union so far. Oh, Butte Food Co.op is up, and Rocky Mountain Credit Union. REI, which is a cool one. Flathead Electric, Parkside Credit Union, and REI. So we're definitely seeing that people are engaged and know their co-ops.
That's great.
And keep letting us know, guys. We love to see kind of where our members are.
And I will turn this section over to Tracy to talk about the housing cooperatives.
Okay, go ahead and advance to the next slide, please. So as we've been crisscrossing the state, housing is definitely, I mean, you are all here for a reason, and this amazing conference is being held, and we have housing coalitions, and we have a lot of people talking about it. Really, you know, what's affecting Montana housing, I think that we could hear all of these that we have listed plus many more. And so we wanted to kind of go into where does cooperatives play a role in housing? So go ahead, Davey. So overall, what is Montana, or what is a housing cooperative? There is an actual National Association of Housing Cooperatives. This is just a quick graphic kind of letting you know where we're at. Right now, most housing cooperatives are kind of more in the eastern states, in larger cities. We're seeing a lot of that movement, but what we are starting to see a trend is that housing cooperatives are starting to come into rural communities, rural states like Montana. And it's really important that people understand that the residents of those housing co-ops buy membership stock in the cooperative, and the cooperative would own the land, building, and common areas. And we're going to go into an example of one here in Montana in a little bit more details. Next one, please. Thanks. So overall, there are a couple different housing cooperatives, more of the traditional housing cooperatives as we like to do it. Market rate allows that, you know, your shares and your shares in that cooperative is always sold at a market value. We have limited equity ones, which really are the way that we can kind of keep low income happening, or if it's a workforce housing co-op or whatever, so that there's some requirements on how you can sell those shares to make sure that that retains the reason of that co-op being formed. And then we have senior housing co-ops. Those are mainly restricted to 55 plus older communities. And they have a variety of different means. Some of those senior housing co-ops have very active living. Others work into more of assisted care facilities. So again, all sorts of ways. Co-ops are very flexible in the way that we create them. Especially in Montana. So we're excited about being able to work with each community and understanding your needs to create those a housing co-op that fits. Also, there's the mutual housing associations. These are mainly what we're seeing being used for. These are mobile home courts being transferred over into community owned. These, though, in the state of Montana are not quite cooperatives. We're very proud of the relationship we have with NeighborWorks Montana and their efforts to get those programs over into commonly owned associations that are very similar to co-ops. They act and look like a co-op. It's just our state laws are preventing a few things there. Next slide. If it will let you. So we belong to the National Cooperative Business Alliance. This is just kind of giving you a quick overview of how many different types of co-ops there are. There's 166,000 affordable units through the limited co-ops. Homes and co-ops communities usually sell for more. They have over 50 million in health and safety improvements happening. And it's just really about, I love this last one, about empowering the residents to be more engaged in the way that they want their community to be managed and operated. So in Montana, we've kind of touched. So in Montana, housing cooperative actually would be incorporating as a for-profit cooperative association. It is collectively owned and governed. So just as what Davey went through, it's really about what the members of that co-op wants. And then the members own the share of the cooperative. Again, the overall development. You don't own your individual unit. You have the right to that individual unit as a membership, but that's usually covered through an occupancy agreement. Most co-ops do have monthly charges to kind of cover additional amenities. We can, the IRS sees co-op shares similar to mortgages, and equity in housing co-ops can be recovered. That's one of the comments that we've received is, well, if I invest in that, how do I ever recover my equity? It's equity and it's just in a different form. So before I move into our example, Tori, did we have any questions, or is there any questions right now on the overview of what co-ops are and housing co-ops? And then we'll move into this example.
I don't see any in the chat.
Okay. Are there any questions from anybody at this point? I'm not seeing any raised hands or anything. Okay, so we'll just keep moving forward. So housing cooperatives in Montana has been a kind of a slow growing new cooperative model. We have been, the Montana Co-op Development Center with our Cooperative Development Network have been trained on doing this for quite a while. But the first one and the only one in Montana is Riverside Crossing. This is in Hamilton. It is an active senior 55 plus pocket neighborhood community. And go ahead to the next slide, Davey. So the way that they've designed this is there are 8 different cottage designs, and I actually think they might have 9 and 10 now. And so they range from different square footages, different looks. I've got some photos here in a second. And then the cost to occupy is based on what the cost of the actual construction is. And then it's a 50,000 share of common stock, which is what your ownership is, your 1 member, 1 vote. And then they have a 1 full-time manager and a part-time director, a maintenance director. And then what they have is all excess operating funds are returned to the members, but only when they receive a reserve going up. And then they also are, because it's a senior living, they did opt to do the limited equity. So it's only 1% annual appreciation. And so the goal is that it never outstrips the ability for it to be affordable for those communities or for their focused community, people at 55 plus. Go ahead, Davey. So this is just one model of it. So the way that the Riverside Crossing actually formed, it was formed in partnership with the Ravalli County Council of Aging. If you ever get a chance to visit with Paul Trevitz or Julie Foster in the Ravalli County area, those 2 were the champions and really were the ones that pushed and got this up and going. And they're in construction. So they have 9 cottages now built, and that's 9 members are living on site, and I think that they have 3 or 4 under construction. And then Ravalli Economic Development actually is gave money through a loan to start doing a little bit of like specs to get out ahead of the demand of what they're seeing. Go ahead, one. So in those monthly charges, these are the things that they do. And so the idea is that it's really worry-free living. If your refrigerator quits working, even though you own it and you're part of the ownership, you still get to call the co-op and they replace it. That's not money out of your pocket to replace those. They cover all of the insurances together, the land lease, the property management, all of those things are all included in a monthly charge to make sure that everything's kind of there and that people that live there are enjoying the life. And I'll show you in a second some of the fun things that they have on site. And this is just another example. I absolutely love it. It is designed as a pocket community. So it's very rolling and they have trails. It's based right there in a heart of like right on the Ravalli Mountain. So they can actually drive or enter into walking trails very easily. Next slide. And this is one of the larger models, just so you can see them. And then all of the amenities, I'm not going to read through all of these, but all of the different amenities that they have, each one can be kind of designed. So the goal is that when a member joins, they get to design their, they get to pick which one of those overall design cottages are, but then they get to put all of the details inside that they want. Next one. And then to share just some of the other stuff, they have outdoor fire pits. They do hosting of different group discussions. They have garages assigned. They have the little libraries. They have a workshop. They have community gardens. And every year they're adding more and more. So this is just a really exciting opportunity for Montana and a model that can work very easily in others. Though this is a senior plus one, the model for housing co-op would be very similar for any of the other forms. So you could do, actually, Davey, go ahead and flip to the other side. I might be getting ahead of myself a little bit. Nope, I think I'm turning it to you, and then we'll talk about different types.
Sorry, so is there any questions on that before? So we're going to present a lot of information. So if you have questions on something, it might be easier to do it now, just because there will be a lot more information kind of getting thrown at you. So is there anything anyone wants us to expand on or explain a little bit more before we move out of that housing co-op model? Okay, well, if so, put it in the chat and we can definitely stop and go back to it. So another way that we have seen, and we actually have in going on right now in Montana, is actually doing an Opportunity Development Cooperative to fund housing. So I will quickly go over, probably not quickly, but I will try to go quickly over Opportunity Development Cooperative. So, oh no, it's advanced, there we go. So an Opportunity Development Co-op is also known as essentially an investment co-op. There's models of investment co-ops that are all over the United States and in Canada, and they're pretty popular and they work pretty well. An Opportunity Development Cooperative is a for-profit investment vehicle, essentially made up of local community members who are pooling their resources to invest into real estate, to invest into opportunities, to invest into projects or causes. And they're basically a way for community members to find solutions with their own local dollars. And the way that we have seen this work for housing is that, well, the one we have now, I guess I'll just use that as our example, is that we had a group of businesses come together and create one of these investment co-ops or an opportunity development co-op. And they pooled their money and they're actually making investments and buying housing for their employees. So the way that it would work is that each business would basically buy a membership share and then make a membership stock. I'm sorry, not membership stock. They would also buy preferred stock, and then they're able to pool enough resources to buy houses, and they're actually doing this in the community of Gardiner, so it's quite expensive, and so they're pooling all these resources, so they're able to actually buy a property that's owned collectively by these number of businesses, and then they're able to provide this housing for their workforce. Sorry, there's like things popping up at me, so I'm getting distracted. Okay. So this is a lot of information, and I'm not going to go over all of that because I could go on for several hours about this type of cooperative, but just know that it is one way to look at financing housing in sort of a unique way and a unique opportunity to do so, especially for workforce housing. We think this is a great opportunity for businesses to come together and really provide a great way to address some of their workforce housing needs. So I'll just really quickly go over sort of why an opportunity and development cooperative might make sense for different for some of these different projects. So one interesting thing about the way that a for-profit cooperative, a Chapter 15 in Montana, is set up is you have two types of stocks. Your first stock is your membership common stock, which allows you your membership vote. And then you also are going to have what we call preferred stock or your investing stock. That doesn't get you any membership, but it does get you, basically you get to invest into the co-op. And that does provide a return. And so that's where that co-op's making money. So for example, if someone were to come together and even though they're maybe not a business owner or they don't actually want to live in the housing that's being, developed or invested in, they still have the opportunity to put up some money and say, I want to see something happen. I want to see this project get off the ground. And so they're able to put that money into that Opportunity Development Cooperative, make a pretty small return, but make a really significant impact on that community. So it's a really, really community-based way to solve some of these problems. And it can be individuals, it can be businesses, it can be a mix of both. So it's really flexible in the way that you can set up who you want that membership to be and who can be involved. And you don't have to set it up in a way that it's huge investments. It can be lots of small investments. So it really makes it affordable for many people to pool those resources together. Kind of already went in that. And I think I can go on a little bit more about that, but I think that's probably going to get more confusing. So, oops, sorry. Hitting too many buttons. So I guess at this point, is there any questions about either one of these models that you guys have or ideas that maybe you have this could be applied to? Oh, God dang.
David, maybe highlight some of our Alberta models that we've been working with in Alberta, not necessarily on the housing, but just to give them a better idea of how Opportunity Development Co-ops work in housing, but in other areas as well.
Sure. So the way that Opportunity Development Cooperatives are being used in the state, and then we also look to Alberta a lot for our examples for cooperatives because they're set up very similar to us, both in their laws and sort of economically, they're very similar to us. And so the way that a lot of them have been are setting up or getting set up is that they're going after specific projects, usually in real estate. So for example, we do have one set up in Musselshell, and they actually became, they bought a share in their Roundup school. So the Roundup school got bought by a developer. They put it out that they were looking for, they were going to sell shares for partnerships, and the community of Roundup came together and said, we would like to buy a share in this building so that we have a say of what happens to it and how it's going to be used. So right now that project is currently getting developed into a multi-use building. So they're going to have the shops and businesses on the first floor, and then actually apartments and condos up on the upper levels. And they are, because they were able to pool those resources, they became a partner, and they're able to have some say in what's happening with that. In a lot of other instances of these investment cooperatives, the people are coming together and they're actually pooling money to buy real estate. And the way that they're making a return on that is that they are they're rehabbing them or they are setting them up to be leased out to businesses, or they are leasing them out as apartments. And there's lots of interesting ways you can do that for. There's also instances of investing cooperatives where they are basically giving out small loans to businesses or to projects to fund some of those things that are happening within their communities. So these are super, super flexible cooperative model that I think is a really, really great tool for not only, real estate or housing, but really for any sort of major projects that communities need and can go through. And so I just think that they're a really great model to solve some of these solutions with your own local capital. And so there's lots of models of these. If there's questions on those, I'm happy to keep talking about that, because these are my favorite kind of cooperative that I've worked with so far, because I do think that they're necessary, and they are so interesting, and they can be so flexible, and they are really, really community based, which is really exciting that a community can come together and solve some of these issues themselves.
And an investing opportunity development co-op can also be formed and invest in another co-op. So like if the community wanted to come together and create an investing cooperative, then those investments could actually go into a housing co-op. So we can layer co-op on top of co-op too, and allow for even more flexibility in the ground. I did see one question though. Tori, I just saw it pop up. Sorry.
I was gonna mention it, but you got it. Question about the Gardiner ODC, just specific funding goals that they have, an existing level of investment from the community.
So at this point, the Gardiner has incorporated, and then they have they've been slowly doing their study. So there's we're going to go through in phases of incorporation, and so they're just in the initial phase of the incorporation. So they haven't yet been really gathering, and then they had some there was some health issues with one of their main leaders. And so they've been a little bit on a pause, and they're just now kind of coming back and starting to get it. So hopefully we can answer that question in more detail in the future.
There's one more question. If you have another second. Are these community ODCs usually formed from goodwill of private dollars? I'm thinking that private developer entity sponsored. Goodwill of private developers.
So neither, I think, if I'm understanding the
or
question.
Or both. Correctly. I'm not sure I understand the question either.
So Opportunity Development Cooperatives are formed by a group of folks who wanted to basically form a business together that's going to be an investment vehicle for something else. Developers can be a member of it, but that doesn't give them any sort of more power or more ability to make decisions in that. So even if they come in as a business, they still get the same sort of level playing field as someone else. So I'll give you, for example, just the way that the investment co-ops we have set up right now, they're basically set up with a pretty reasonable membership buy-in. So it's usually about anywhere from $500 to $1,000 for your membership buy-in. That membership affords you one vote, and a business can come in and they can pay the same amount that a community member can. They're still going to be an equal footing. They still get that same sort of ability to make decisions for the co-op. And then there's the second layer, which is the preferred stock. And you can set those up in any increment that you want. Usually it's anywhere from about $5,000 or so, and people can own multiple pieces of those. So say, for example, there is a community member that says, I want to be a member. I have $5,000. I'm going to do in preferred stock. You could also have a developer that says, I want to be a member. I have $25,000. I can do preferred stock. Even though that developer puts in more money, it doesn't necessarily give them anything extra. But on the flip side of that, as a cooperative, since you are set up as a cooperative, you can also enter into partnerships with developers, which is what we're seeing a lot. So we've had a few conversations around this where there's a developer who is either owns the land or they already have plans for this development. So the co-op, the investment co-op could enter into a partnership with a developer. So that there is that aspect there too. So since it is a for-profit business, it does have that ability to enter into a partnership with another business. Does that answer that?
Davey, I think I would also add that what we saw in Muscle Shell is the opportunity that the investing co-op bought shares into a private development. And so that's another component is that the investing co-op can purchase shares in. They can also buy or own land and refurbish. One of the Alberta models is more like that, is that they're investing in the buildings themselves. The co-op owns that building, but then they're incubating new businesses. And then those businesses come in with the thought that they would either purchase it or it gets sold to another company. So then the return of investment to the co-op is when that purchase happens of that building. And so this is what's so cool about cooperatives, is that we could really be flexible and talk to each one of you guys about that. And when we give presentations, it's sometimes not always the easiest for us to tell you every single component that we can do it, because there is so much flexibility on the ground. But she said,
Caitlin,
yeah.
Yeah, you answered the question, she said. Thank you.
Okay, good.
And sorry, Tori, I'll stop taking over too on yours. I'm not following chat anymore.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
And then I guess if there's anything else, we'll have time for more discussion, I think, at the end as well. So doesn't want to change. There we go. You want to take this one, Tracy?
Sure. So how are co-ops formed? So kind of tongue in cheek on this, you call us and our information will be shared with you. We are, as a statewide resource for cooperative development, we are here to provide you that kind of how to work through facilitation and ability to set up your own cooperative. We have business planning and economic development resources. As you saw earlier in the presentation, we often work with the local economic development organization in your community. And then we, excuse me, we can also help on kind of developing different funding scenarios. And if you're applying for grant funds or loan dollars, we can help you apply for those applications, again, normally in partnership with the local development organization in your area. And so when we're looking at phases in forming a co-op, we used to have the steps, and that was a little overwhelming. Co-ops are not something that just happens overnight. So what all of you guys, unless you're one of the co-ops that we're currently working with, you're kind of in this exploratory phase. And the exploratory phase really is, will a co-op work for what you're trying to address? We recommend hosting an introduction meeting. Sometimes we can join, or one of our cooperative development specialists can join. We do a co-op 101 and kind of start understanding what the project is. And then we give some advice back, whether or not this could be a really, whether it could be a co-op, or if we can give you advice on who you need to connect with. We are the first ones to tell you that we don't think it's a co-op. That's a rarity for us because we love this model so much. But that's really the first step. And then you go into planning phase. So this is where a steering committee is formed. They go into the detail, and the planning phase really can be 1 to 2 months. And some of our planning steering committees have taken several months. And so it's definitely kind of an ebb and flow, depending on their time, their commitment, what they're able to do, and what their timeline is to complete a project. The steering committee is responsible for identifying the actual needs, creating the feasibility. We always recommend a business plan. We definitely need performance, because this at the end of the day is a business. We're there to help you walk through all of those steps though. And then the steering committee also kind of designs the overall. So what does the membership look like? What is the cost of the membership going to be? And then they're going to move you into legal phase. The legal phase is when you start filing with those with the Secretary of State and the Montana Securities. And then you've got the whole opportunity of pledges and finalizing your cooperative during that legal phase. And then once you've done that, you have your membership, your bylaws have been approved, your board of directors have been assigned, you start moving into your operational phase. Sometimes the planning and legal takes way more, and operation starts right out of the gate, depending on what type of co-op. And other times, it takes a while to get off the ground if you're building new buildings or trying to move into, it just, each one is so different that, we don't really give a specific time frame or anything, because we have co-ops can form in probably 4 to 6 months at the earliest. Others are taking 18 plus months. So it's a wide range, and it really is dependent on how the steering committee and what type of project's happening. So there, I think we were going to pause and see if there's any questions on that. And then we wanted to kind of work you guys through some steps, and this is more interactive. So feel free to turn on your videos and ask questions. But before we get you into the next, actually taking those first steps to building a co-op, do we have questions on or comments or anything like that?
And everybody has the power to unmute themselves. So ask away.
We're so good, Davey. We have no questions. And we will, I think through the housing conference, these slides are available as Tori put in the chat, but also our contact information. So we threw a lot at you guys in a relatively quick time frame. And so we always are happy to visit with you guys on how we see housing co-ops, give you samples of different housing cooperatives. Like we said, there's multiple ones on the eastern side of the US. They're kind of working their way over into Western US and into Montana slowly and surely. But we can always find some examples. One thing though that we want to stress if you're out there doing research on your own on cooperatives is just make sure that you understand cooperatives by nature are a beast of state ownership and state laws. We do have to follow there's federal Chapter T IRS laws to them, but really each state is a little different in the way that they form, how they treat co-ops. Some are completely only nonprofits, others have different layers like we do in Montana. And so if you're looking at a cooperative in another state, the basic principles are going to be the same because all co-ops belong to those same principles. But know that, if you're looking at incorporation papers or examples, that we're here to make sure that you're doing it according to state rules, not necessarily for example, we had a group looking at one in North Dakota, very similar in many ways, but they only have nonprofit components, and the project that they were working on wouldn't have been. So a lot of the work that they started to do using those templates from another state didn't fit in the long run. So we just caution people that if you're working on this, make sure that you know Montana rules. So if there's no questions, we'll move you into where you get to write on paper and start planning out a co-op. And we're a little early. We're like 10 minutes early, so we're doing good. Okay, Dave, you want to move us next slide? Okay, so what we want to do is just, we want you to kind of do a little bit of self-reflection. This normally works so much better in person, and hopefully the next time we see and interact with you guys, it is in person, but we want you to just jot down what are your housing needs in your community? Kind of start outlining what that would look like if you're addressing it. Is it senior housing? Is it workforce needs? Is it rehabilitation of old homes? What are your things? And just kind of make that jot down list. And we'll just give you a couple minutes to do that. Okay. So would anybody like to share some of the needs that they jotted down? You can take yourself off mute, you can turn on your video, or you can use chat. Single family home, low income. Affordability. Okay. Okay, so we saw some answers here. Inventory, permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, workforce housing, affordable homes and rentals, inventory, workforce housing. Very similar, it looks like, across the board. Go ahead and switch us to the next slide, Davey. Housing for you. So within all of those that you guys have mentioned, there's different ways that we could be looking at cooperative for that. And so if you take the model like we're seeing Gardiner start and kind of laying that groundwork for us, that could be something of using an opportunity development cooperative to maybe purchase some of those older homes. The reason Gardiner started looking at that opportunity specifically was how many of their homes went into second vacation homes or Airbnb, or were kind of being utilized more by the tourism component and they just were running out of places for their employees to be living. We're having that same discussion across a lot of communities, especially communities with high tourism impacts, and what we can be doing. And so the different ways is that you could create those employees, those workers that are working in those communities that need a place, they could create their own housing co-op where they purchase the land and they build on top of it, or you can do a senior housing. And with the hopes that your senior housing, this is more of what Ravalli was trying to do, is that seniors were kind of holding those starter home stock, the single family homes, those were being held by seniors, and there weren't necessarily the transition into other living opportunities. These are active seniors, right? These are people that are not going to move in. And so Montana across the board seems to be kind of missing that middle component for seniors, like to transition out of their starter homes. So you can use the housing co-op model like Ravalli to build that kind of in-between step. And then you can also be using it as employers coming together to purchase and build their own units. And so multiple ways of doing that. So our next question of what we want to ask you guys and to jot down is identify who you need at the table. So say you wanted to actually host a conversation in your community. We don't know every community. I mean, Davey and I are both from Montana and we're from far different corners. She's from Wolf Point, I'm from Eureka. So we have a feel for some communities, but at the end of the day, we don't know your communities. So if you wanted to look at us coming and working with you on hosting that initial meeting, we are happy to do that. We love coming in and working with communities on that, but it would be really up to you or your group or whoever you're working with to identify who needs to be at that initial table. So kind of brainstorm out who are your business leaders, some community leaders, are there some employers or employees, seniors and senior service providers, like Ravalli really worked closely with their Council of Aging. Do you have housing organizations in your community, members of the community in general, and who else? And kind of start drafting some of those ideas. And we'll just give it a minute or two, and then we'll ask for the same thing. Put your ideas in the chat box. And when you're doing this, because you're the only one looking at it, and you don't have to share that with us, feel free to put people's names. Like, actually, who would you invite if there's specific leaders in your communities or people that you know that would be good? Also, other ones to maybe think about are your contractors, and what, knowing what's going on in the state right now, having contractors early on might be a good thing. Lenders and realtors would be great, Tori. Yep. What are your other ideas? Tired farmers or businessmen, alumni? Great. Any other suggestions from anybody on who you would invite to the table to start an initial discussion? Okay. And when, yes, Montana West Economic Development, absolutely. I actually sent them a note the other day because I knew that they were doing some meetings and saying, hey, make sure you talk about co-ops. So hopefully that came up. I think that was today that they were doing those. Aspiring homeowners, great one. Building association, housing coalition, schools and churches, great ideas.
I'll also throw out that you can invite MCDC to the table as well. We are always happy to come in for those initial discussions and just go over what it looks like and how to get there. So we like those discussions, and we like to start those early because I think it's good to know if it's going to work right out of the gate. So don't forget to include us.
Put that down. All right, go ahead and move us to the next slide. So as this is perfect segue from what Davey just said, we do recommend an initial co-op 101 with a brainstorming of possibilities. And so what we can offer to different communities is that we have a more in-depth 101 where it kind of walks through all of the ins and outs. What you guys got today was more of the 30,000 foot level, but really getting into more of what is the co-op, how does it form, what are those steps within each one of those phases. And then we can also help you facilitate an actual brainstorming, kind of what is it? And so kind of taking you up where everything goes down and trying to focus you into what ideally would you want to work with. And then at the end of that session, the goal is that if it is going to be a co-op, that a steering committee is formed, that we can start working. So from here, start kind of designing what your brainstorming session would look like. From your players that you listed, who are you inviting? Where can you hold it? Do you send out an invitation to a small gathering, or do you host a big public meeting? No, it wasn't a housing co-op. One of the more current newly formed co-ops was Butte Food Co-op, and they hosted a public meeting, and they got like over 300 people that came because they were interested in that topic. And from there, the amount of energy and just information that flowed was really good. Do you need food and drinks? What kind of time of day is this? Childcare is always a big issue, especially if you're talking about those workforce or maybe lower income. Are you going to need to provide some childcare so those parents can actually engage in the discussion? And then do you have somebody within your local community that can actually talk about the issues at hand? We can come in and provide you and probably pull in NeighborWorks Montana to help us with that, or the Housing Coalition on the larger scale issues, but who knows your community best and who could really get into talking about that? That could be a local real estate agent that's out there. It could be a developer. It could be somebody in your school system, or, the principal saying, I've been trying to recruit 3 teachers and I can't get anybody in. And so kind of thinking outside the box of there. And then what resources or community assets can you identify that you want to have discussed during this initial brainstorming session? And I'm hoping you're all kind of writing down notes and doing that. This is the problem with virtual, is I can't see you and I can't tell exactly how everybody is interacting and like if you're getting anywhere with these thoughts or suggestions. So my hope is that you're writing down and you're coming out of this with an idea on how you're going to host a session to get your co-op started for housing of some sort, or a development or opportunity development co-op. And feel free to, again, take yourself off mute and tell us what you're thinking. We'll just give it a minute or so more. Okay. Does anybody want to share some of their thoughts on how you would be developing your brainstorming? Our community land trust. Yes, Pam, great question. Yes, community land trust can own the land. We've been exploring here in Cascade County the option of possibly developing a housing co-op on county land. And so if the county would own the land and then the housing co-op could be built on top of it, what would that look like? In the Valley Riverside crossing, the Council of Aging actually was donated the land through an endowment or through a estate plan. And so that is the land is owned by the Council of Aging. And so as part of their monthly fees or their annual fees that they've incorporated into the cost is a lease over to the Council of Aging, which then is able to use those funds to do other work with. So it's a great partnership to have the land held by a different entity or a nonprofit of sorts. Does anybody want to share how they've brainstormed or how they've kind of designed a brainstorming session? Okay, we have a quiet group, Davey.
The afternoon.
Okay. It is. It's afternoon after lunch on Zoom. Want to go ahead and move us forward? And guys, that's really where we have for today, what we put together for you. We're happy to stay on, talk individually as you head back to your individual communities and start talking about what a co-op may look like. So we're really into that question, comments, concerns section of it. And if you have any, feel free to, or yeah. Davey, did you want to add anything?
I don't think so. I think that the biggest thing to think about if you are thinking that this is potentially something that could work, two things. Know that it's going to be lots and lots of conversations with lots of different people. And even when you're forming it, it's a lot of talking. Cooperatives are not done in a vacuum. And so I think it's really important to know that you will spend a lot of time talking and re-talking about things over and over again. And I think the other thing to remember is that there's a lot of flexibility. So just because it's been done one way for one cooperative one time, that does not mean that that is the standard for all going forward. So really every single one is so different and so unique that they can be made to fit what the members need. I mean, at the heart of a cooperative, that's why they're developed, is to fill a need for their members. And so they're really, really individual and they're really unique. And they're really flexible in the ways that we can come up with to make them happen. So.
Thanks, guys. So we do have a dedicated time now for question and answer until about 2:30. I see there's one in the chat. So yeah, anybody with a question, feel free to turn your back on and take your turn. But yeah, in the chat or just freewheeling it with Davey and Tracy. So the chat question, could you talk more about how in a housing cooperative, Hamilton, for example, is staffed and operated? Do they typically have a team of staff to operate the cooperative and respond to resident needs?
Yes. So housing cooperatives, usually within those performance that we develop with you, is at the end of the day a business. So you do incorporate staff. Theirs is a little, their structure includes the Council of Aging. So Paul Trevitz really does do a lot of work through both the role as Council of Aging and as the co-op director. And then you'll probably, co-ops, depending on how much money they raise up front, will either start with staff or they work towards staff. And so we incorporate that into the business planning and cost analysis, is to have staff on hand.
I did also want to mention that you can go into the app, the conference app, and there's in the agenda a link to this session. And there's another format to continue conversation after this presentation. Right. And I do want to say, when we were looking at doing a housing cooperative in Circle for some assisted living needs there, the biggest, I guess, hurdle we had was education, and just getting everybody that you did invite to the table or that wanted to be a part of the conversation on the same page about what a cooperative it is exactly, and the process for forming a cooperative. And that was definitely many conversations and coffee and passionate people that had different visions for what the needs were in their community. But it was a really good experience, and yeah, couldn't have done it without MCDC, I'll tell you that. Not that we didn't get the housing cooperative formed, but the whole process was facilitated by MCDC, and they were fantastic.
Thank you, Tori.
So there's a couple more questions in there. Do you want to tackle those, Tracy? Can you see
sure,
them?
I can open them.
Okay.
So Adam just said, are there any thoughts on why there aren't housing co-ops in Montana outside of the one project in Hamilton and the 14 manufacturing home co-ops with NeighborWorks Montana? Lack of developers' interest or lack of financing? I actually think, Adam, Tori hit it on the nail. I think it's an educational component. Davey and I are, like, I've been with the Co-op Development Center as one of their co-op development specialists for years. And the conversation's kind of been circling, like, can we do housing co-ops? But I don't think that there had been a lot of educational outreach on it yet. And we're starting to see more interest in it as more people are hearing about it. And having one of those active ones that is actually building and moving forward has been really good at kind of generating that interest. So it is education. And then there is a layer in Ravalli, they were good to be working with a credit union, but financing and getting traditional banks and people to understand how a housing co-op will be done takes a layer too. And so that's another component that we bring to the table, is to work with local financial institutions on how to finance the individual buy-in as well as the actual overall cooperative buy-in. And then I hope that answered your question, Adam. Please let me know in the chat if you want me to go deeper in there. And then Pam said, I'm not clear about the difference between a co-op and a ROC. So Pam, are you talking about the ROC USA funds?
It sounds like she's probably referring to the resident-owned communities. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. The resident-owned communities.
Okay. So it's mostly the biggest difference is just because our state law, if you're talking about the ROC USA, they require that those funds to purchase that program, that they remain as a nonprofit. And because of our state laws, they actually transfer over into a for-profit entity. And so that's part of why we work with NeighborWorks and let them take the lead on those. And then it's just the way that they're set up too. Residential or community owned versus co-op, it's really on how are they set up. A co-op is always equal. Nobody ever shareholders or anything. Nobody ever has a controlling interest in them. So that's the biggest difference, I would say. Davey, did you want to add?
No, I think at the end of the day, I think that's the difference between most anything in a co-op is that ownership structure. And I think when you think about a nonprofit, like even though you can be, you can donate money or whatever, you still don't get that sort of controlling factor as you do in a co-op. And so I think that's the biggest thing to remember about a co-op is that equitable, democratic control of everything. So even if your house is 1,000 square feet bigger than someone else's, you still have an equal say in what happens to that co-op. So I think that's the biggest difference is that ownership structure.
Yeah. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, we can always give you guys 15 minutes to enjoy, like go outside before the snow flies, I'm hearing this weekend, and enjoy a little bit of sun before your next session too. Tori, what do you think?
I'm all for that. If I'm sure everybody would like to go enjoy that sun. And I didn't hear you mention the snow word. I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear that.
Well, people are gonna stop asking Dave and I, like telling us just to stay home. It seems like anytime that we get on the road to go visit somebody, we're biting snow lately. So it's our fault. Great. So guys, please do know that we are available to answer questions. We do have a lot of information on our website, which is just www.mcdc.coop. I had put that in the chat earlier, but we'll go ahead and put it here again. And there is also an entry, like if you want to, you can always fill out a form that we have there on MCDC's website. That gets to us, that gives us a little bit more of your thoughts and what you're thinking about. But feel free to contact us if you have any questions or you want more information, or if you want to start exploring these opportunities in your community. We're willing and ready and really excited about bringing these solutions to Montana.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining us. This concludes our day together, and we look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow morning. There's an optional coffee talk at 8 o'clock and then the plenary session at 9. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, get out of here.
Tori, did you need anything else from us?
No, that was all I had in my notes.
Okay.
We're good.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Bye.